Hello everyone, Namaste, this is Shami Harens and welcome back to Your Wealth India. In today's episode, we are going to further explore understandings India's economic growth through GDP as a parameter. Now, many of you might have been confused on why this information could be useful for you, but if you're someone who is interested in investment in financial instruments like equity markets and so on, this information is definitely going to be useful for you in future. So without further ado, let us start discussing today's topic, which is decoding India's economic growth through GDP. To grasp India's economic landscape, it's crucial to examine the growth in GDP over the years. We are going to start off with comparing current GDP over last year and then with the historic data before that. However, a small disclaimer that the GDP for financial year 23-24 are only the estimates that were shared by the Government of India. And then we are going to understand through these numbers that whether India's GDP growth is good, bad or ugly. The GDP estimate of India for FY 23-24 is around 3.732 trillion US dollars. When compared to FY 22-23, GDP of India was about 3.42 trillion USD. So there is almost a growth of about 9%. Now there might be some confusion with the numbers here because many of you might have heard the number 7.3%. So you need to understand that here we are discussing nominal GDP or GDP at current price and not real GDP. Now what's the difference between them? Probably we'll talk about it in our coming video perhaps. Now let us try to further understand this by looking at the numbers of the past historical GDP growth data. While the graph looks quite impressive, but it is very difficult to make inferences just by looking at the overall GDP numbers, and that is the reason why everyone is more interested in monitoring the GDP growth rate instead. So if we try to look at the areas where GDP has shrunk, the most notifiable places in the graph appears to be these 3 years in particular, which is 1966, 1980 and 2020. So let us try to see what went wrong here. In the year 1965, India faced a very severe drought followed immediately by a balance of payment crisis. In 1979-80, the Indian economy faced a double whammy with a severe drought and crude oil prices almost doubling due to supply disruptions because of the Iranian revolution against the state's monarch. And we all know what happened in the year 2020, COVID. And when we look at the years when there was spike in the GDP growth rate, the most significant years that come into picture are 1975, 1988 and 1999. Well, mid-1970s period was the time when the very famous Green Revolution was at its peak in India. Though our economy was liberalized in 1991, the initial steps already started taking place few years before that, and the effect of this could be seen in the years to come as well, resulting in yet another spike in 1999. So looking at all this, we realize how the macroeconomic factors as well as the economic policies play an important role in shaping a country's economic growth. While it is very difficult to give a single verdict to India's economic growth given that it still faces so many challenges, but looking at how we started in 1947 to being one of the fastest growing large economy of the world, I would definitely give it a very good rating.